Welcome to the Drafthouse Podcast. I'm Daniel.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrea.
I'm Connor.
I'm Garrett.
I'm Matthew, and this is Carl. What's that, Carl?
You want us to talk about scary movies?
Some of our first horror movies?
All right, Connor, would you like to go first?
You know what? If you insist, it is October. So our first horror movies. I've never really watched horror movies or sat down and watched one all the way through. I've really only seen clips and stuff of that nature. But one that really got to me. I don't know if it's horror or not, but it was Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I watched it for my film class, and I was not watching the first half of it, but there was that scene when this guy is just freaking out about all the pods and the seeds being everywhere. And everyone's like, "Bro, you're delirious. What's going on?" And it was like they're next door neighbors, and then they go in their garden, and in the back or in their greenhouse, and see all the seeds sprouting up, and I'm like, "Yo, wait, what?" And from that moment on, I was like, I was fully engaged. I was like, hold on, and there was a ton of buildup that probably would have made it better.
The movie grabbed your attention.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I was half paying attention, so I knew in the beginning they were like, "Oh, this person's not acting right," and I'm like,
You were half
you're
paying
out of your
attention.
mind." But then it just kept on escalating with it was a threat that you would have thought was really small, but then it just grows into this huge thing that takes over the town. And I mean, massive spoilers, obviously. I mean, film podcast.
There's gonna be spoilers all throughout this thing.
Yeah, but it they were so cultish too, and the ending of it—well, not really the ending, but the climax and the ending twist is just it really hits you. It just punches you right in the gut. And when they're still running, when the guy manages to run away from the aliens, that whole sequence is super tense, because it's an entire village chasing after this one guy. But then he gets to the freeway, and you're just like, yes, it's freedom, civilization.
Yes.
It was a huge point of relief that I actually felt I don't know, for a movie that was of that kind of oldish caliber, with the acting that could be pretty cheesy at points. That it was very effective in accomplishing what it set out to do in that regard. It very freaky, aliens just taking over an entire city, and I imagine someone coming in to do a trade deal or something, and they're and they just get captured, and they're like, okay.
I love aliens.
Especially the movie Alien. It's
Right.
horror, isn't it? Daniel, have you ever seen Alien?
You know, that's a movie I've only seen clips of. I've only seen parts of it on YouTube, or I accidentally clicked on it on TV, but I've never actually sat down and watched that film.
Me neither.
So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know too much about it.
You guys are missing
But hey, man,
out.
I mean, that kind of brings me to my point here. I mean, the first scary movie I watched, I think, talking about when I was a young age, probably 4 years old. I was at my friend's house, and his grandfather was there, and he was watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, I was only 4 years old, man. But I'm like, what is this movie? You know, and I'm like, hey, can I watch it? And he's like, sure. So I sat down, and I see this guy who's, his face is disfigured, and I don't know. And I came to find out he was called Leatherface, right? Because I guess his face got burned or something, and so it looks very scary.
He's
but
wearing
he
a mask made of other people's faces.
Exactly. So I came to find that out when I got older. I didn't know what was going on when I was younger. I was just like, that looks creepy.
That looks fun.
That looks fun.
I have not seen that one, but like when I was talking to my brother about scary movies, since of course it's October, and he's telling me about some, and he mentioned that one. I was like, I've never seen that. He's like, you and me need to watch that like on Halloween, and I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
I love that movie. I have me a poster in my room of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like the one that they didn't use for actual advertisements for the movies.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, you were
that
saying,
movie
Daniel?
take place here in Texas, right?
Yeah, it was like West Texas.
Oh,
No, it was in
God.
New Mexico.
Oh.
What was it? I thought it was in West Texas.
Sure is a Texas
There,
Chainsaw
it's called
Massacre
the-
happening in Mexico.
It would have been the New Mexico Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, that's the joke I was
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, but that doesn't roll off the
That is
tongue
a
as
very
well.
good point.
Yeah, it.
Anyways, you were saying, Daniel?
Well, yeah, just a guy who just full on chases people with a chainsaw. I mean, I was like, it was kind of awesome to me, yet also kind of frightening at the same time. Very graphic. Definitely was not expecting the carnage that ensued during that film. Also, one of the main characters, I believe, there's some kind of torture scene. I guess the family that Leatherface comes from, they're a bunch of like country cannibals or something.
no.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, something like that.
But right, they like kind of tie her up to a chair and they're all just kind of messing with her. And I remember I was like
Scene.
watching that.
They're
I'm like, oh
playing
my
with their
gosh,
food.
right? Is this allowed in a movie? I'm like, this is like, wow. So yeah, very scary movie for a 4-year-old for sure.
What about you, Andrea?
Well, let's see. I actually never really watched horror movies until I was about like 14. And so I think one of the very first movies that I ever saw, I was with my cousins, and it's called Dead Silence. I'm sure y'all have heard of that before, with like the
I
killer
have.
dolls.
That's a
Yeah.
really good anthology.
Yeah, so that was definitely at the top of my list. It's directed. This director actually directed all the Conjuring movies and Insidious and some of the Saw movies. His name is James Wan. I'm sure y'all are familiar with those movies too.
Mhm.
The Aquaman guy.
But the reason why it really scared me back then, I would probably say was, I just remember watching it with my cousin, so it was kind of just like a watch night, and we were at her house, and she actually owned dolls. So the movie's about like killer haunted dolls and like this killer grandma who like owned the dolls. Well, my cousin like owned some creepy looking dolls, and I guess that's just like my heritage kind of thing, like weird dolls and like dressed in little weird outfits. But anyways, I just remember, so that made it 10 times worse. I just remember this one scene specifically where one of the main characters, he's actually like trying to fix some pump in that house where most of the movie is filmed, that haunted house where all like the theater, I would say. But he like goes and he fixes the pump under, and like all you see is just like, the music is super, it's like quiet almost, but it's just intense sound effects. So like it goes from one scene from him fixing the pump to this other scene where all you see is these black, like long, pointy, scary fingernails just wrap around this like wall object that grandma who like owned all the dolls, she was hiding behind there, and she just peeks out, and it was just completely scarring. And so
Ew.
I think, yeah, just think about that, like just being laid down at night and just seeing
A
that
huge fan of
weird
fingernails in
old
general.
dead lady just like pop up. It was just the
It
scariest
was
thing,
like
really.
silent, but the sound effects were dialed to 11.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was terrified. Like, she was black, and just her long, scary witch hands. I don't know. It was just something about that just scarred
Somebody
me.
turned the gain up.
Yes. Oh, it was scary.
That
So
is a
that
playground
sure.
for sound designers, situations like that.
But yeah, and I honestly had a nightmare that night too, so that wasn't fun.
Oh, no.
But anyways, moving on. What about you, Garrett? What is your favorite first horror movie that you watched?
Real quickly, as a fun fact to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the all the props in the movie that were like the body parts were all actual real body parts and bones and guts. It was all animal pieces, except for the bones were taken from the local graveyard. It was so bad that the production team had to leave the house and like go and get sick outside because the heat and the smell would be so bad.
Oh my god, no way.
Oh gosh!
Okay.
Wow,
That's
that
metal.
makes the
That's
man.
metal.
That's
You know-
dedication.
Can you? Hey, also, Can you refrain from talking about bones in front of Carl?
I'll try my
right.
percent.
I'll try my best.
Poor Carl.
Hey,
He gets
that was
really
some of his family
uncomfortable about
members.
that kind of talk.
That was some of his family members in that. I'm just pointing out that they were in there.
You can't.
No.
That was his dad. His dad was in there.
Well, Carl, your dad did a good job.
Sorry, Carl.
But anyways, so
Give
for
your dad
me,
props.
I'm a huge horror fan, and so whenever I started at a pretty young age, probably around the same age as Daniel, except for I chose to do it. And whenever I was 4, me and my parents sent me to a daycare, and a bunch of the other kids
Oh no!
were all obsessed with this TV show called Goosebumps
Oh,
because we had a
boy.
bunch of VHSs of them lying around.
Oh wow.
So we popped one in, and we watched The Haunted Mask, as well as we watched. It was the episode with like the dad that went in the basement. Oh, the dad that like was a plant person in the basement. And for me, I don't know why, but just somebody being a plant person terrified the crap out of me. I have no idea why, but it was so scarring to me. Holy cow!
Plants,
but
huh?
but I loved Goosebumps. Like we would make like fake tattoos with like green markers of the symbol for it, and like I owned like a bunch of the books for Goosebumps. Like I had a
Yeah.
whole shelf of them.
Would you say
Definite classics.
Would
Hmm?
you say that the plant guy scene gave you goosebumps?
Scares. Oh.
I would like to not comment about that. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I don't remember what my first horror movies are. It's kind of a blur in terms of when I watch horror movies. But I definitely know my first experience to horror was in a non-horror film. But it was the one scene there in it that goes full horror. And that is the Doc Ock hospital scene in Spider-Man 2. Now, when I was a kid, I was only shown movies like that. Like there weren't the most horrifying or the most mature movies that I would watch as a kid would be like The Dark Knight, where where the only scary thing about that is Heath Ledger's performance. And
Right.
but that
Right,
but
right.
at the time I didn't really think of it as horrifying with Heath Ledger. I was like, dude, the Joker's so scary and neat. It was like it didn't feel like horror.
It was more of a
But-
sickening fascination.
Yeah, but with the hospital scene in Spider-Man 2, you realize that yeah, the guy who directs this also made Evil Dead, which yikes.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't think that as a kid, obviously, but now I look at that scene and I go, oh yeah, you can totally see Evil Dead. And when
that movie
I-
is scary for sure.
Yeah, and that scene just terrified me so much as a kid. I would have nightmares whenever I watched it. I've probably seen that movie 1,000 times. I've probably seen that scene only like 20 or 10.
Oh no.
Holy crap!
Is it bad that I feel bad for Doc Ock?
But yeah, he felt like a more genuine horror villain in that scene.
Mhm.
Especially
And,
since he has 4 giant arms.
Yeah, definitely.
And they were like
it's-
attached to his spine, weren't
Yes.
Yeah, don't, Carl. I'm sorry, man. Look, I don't know what his problem is. I don't know why he keeps bringing up bones.
they?
All I
Carl,
know is
you're not
it's-
special. We all have bones.
Hey,
Just
Alright.
saying.
what's that, Carl?
Oh, you want us to now talk about non-horror movies that scared us?
You know, that is a great point. Carl, I've got to say that. Oh man, so probably the first non-horror movie that scared me that I could remember, um, was when I was watching Man of Steel with my dad in theaters, and the movie was great. It's got like it's real feelsy, very otherworldly, but there's this part whenever the evil Kryptonians like discover Earth, but all you know at that point is like Clark is talking to his mom or something, and then like all the power in the world basically like just shuts off, and then on the screen appears just the words in just it just says you are not alone, and that sequence like it like pans across the entire globe with a bunch of different locales, and it shows like different languages, and like the lighting and like the lack of music and like just the mood in that like scene, like even though that you knew that like Clark was Superman at that point, it was still like this is really unnerving. Like
That
it
would
really
freak
freaked
me
me
out.
Like I felt
Mhm.
genuinely vulnerable sitting there in my chair, like what is going to happen? Cause I don't think I had ever like seen the full. I mean, I had like kind of like I had like a really basic understanding of it, but I never really experienced the whole Superman story, and that movie was the first time that it happened to me. And like the whole rest of the movie is filled with lots of like really great action and very feelsy music and scenes. Bless Hans Zimmer's soul. But that one sequence was just like harrowing for 12-year-old me sitting in that little chair.
No.
What about you, Garrett?
So I really have two movies. The first one I'm just gonna keep brief. It was I think it's the Son of the Mask. The scene with the whenever he turns that was absolutely terrifying to me. That scared I was like, how is she gonna live now? I was like like I had nightmares of that thing chasing me, like in the middle of the night, just in a random parking lot. That giant nose person chasing me, and that scared me as a kid so badly. But one that's more recent is I recently watched a really good. It's more of a psychological thriller than anything else. It's a really good movie. It's called The Platform on Netflix,
I've
and
heard.
it's not a American movie. There's a dubbed and subbed version. But it's a movie that's about like this tower that there's like two people per floor, and there's a platform that slowly goes down, and so you have to you eat what you can on the platform because it's a giant smorgasbord of food, and it goes the further it goes down, the less food there is until the people at the bottom they can't eat,
Oh.
and each month you are assigned a different random floor.
Wow.
So one month you could be at the very top eating like a king, eating as much as you can, or another month you could be at the bottom with literally no food. And some people even resorted to cannibalism down there.
Holy crap.
What? That sounds crazy.
It's an amazing movie, and I recommend it for anybody who wants to get into the kind of that psychological thriller mood.
Yeah.
It's real. I will say it's not for the faint of heart whenever it comes to gore or like poop. But it's a really good movie. And I absolutely love it. I couldn't recommend it anymore. But again, it's in Spanish and it is dubbed, and I would recommend watching it in the dubbed. Mainly just because they portray their emotions better. Of course, if you rather people speak English, you can. But the performance of the actors are just absolutely amazing, especially the main character. He's absolutely great.
When
But
you say dubbed, do you mean like the
What is
like the
what is
native dub or the English dub?
the English dub,
Okay.
the English dub.
Cool.
Alright.
The Netflix, if you choose to listen to it in Spanish, it has like the subtitles at the bottom, so you can understand what they're saying. If you don't speak Spanish, like myself,
Uh-huh.
but it's
I
it's
speak
funny.
Spanish.
It's a really, really good movie, and I would recommend it to anybody who wants to get, if they want to get just chills down their spine without exactly being horrified. Anyways,
It's a good thing I'm
well,
bilingual.
what about you, Andrea?
So I'm actually not one to scare pretty easily. Well, actually, no, I'm totally kidding. Yes, I totally am. This is why like suspenseful movies or like thriller movies are also my top fave. That I would also not like consider exactly horror, but just right up there because it just makes me jump out of my chair still. And so a movie, um, let's see, that scared me regardless. Even if it wasn't horror, what I would probably have to say would be, called Sinister. Y'all know that movie?
I've not heard of it. No.
I've heard the name, but I haven't seen it.
It's a really scary. The plot, the whole story plot is just scary. It's
Ooh, that poster.
about this family. Or actually, I have two. I'm actually going to talk about this other one called Disturbia, and that one stars with Shia LaBeouf. I don't know if y'all heard of that one.
No.
Yeah,
I've
that's
heard
a
of it, but I've
classic.
heard of
That's a
Shia
classic.
LaBeouf.
Yeah, so that one is for sure scary. I would consider basically Shia LaBeouf, like they live in this neighborhood and this new neighbor moves in, and he's like a middle-aged guy, and Shia LaBeouf and like the other lead character, which plays his best friend, they kind of just spy on him because they like witness some weird stuff, and he just kind of tries to lure his mom, and tries to like hit it off with her because the neighbor figures out that they are spying on him. So he just kind of wants to like scare them and like taunt with them. And I think at one point they go into his house, just to like spy, like actually just get a deeper look into his life. And they like stumble across what looks like this like meat market, basically something of that sort.
No.
But yeah, and so he's like a complete like low key instantly find out, and he's like out eating dinner with his mom when they find that out. So like
That sounds like Holmes's Murder Mansion.
it's a very good movie. It's so scary, and there's definitely some parts where he just like sneaks up on and like sneaks in the house, and you just witness him killing. It's quite bloody actually. I don't know why it's not really considered a horror movie because it's right on the edge, but I would say that movie is for sure definitely on the scary list for me. Yeah, what about you, Daniel?
Well, somebody brought up a psychological thriller earlier. It was Garrett, right, with that movie you were talking about. The one I'm talking about is also a psychological thriller. It's the Jordan Peele movie Get Out.
Oh man.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He's a
so
great
good.
director.
Right, and it's hilarious because when you think of Key and Peele, you think of their comedy sketches, like they're
Right.
but the guy is a complete genius, when it
Yeah.
comes to writing like outside of the box, kind of make you think kind of films. And this is one of them. I'll say I didn't expect the movie to go in the direction it did. It surprised me greatly when I first saw it. I'm like, I don't know what's going to be so strange about this movie. It seems like a totally normal family.
That's how they get you. That's how they get you, man.
Yeah, that's the real.
Right, and as the movie progresses, he keeps giving you like it's kind of like a breadcrumb trail. He keeps leading you into the fact that these people aren't what they seem to be, and they're kind of strange actually, and there's some strange activity going on here. And so yeah, as it kind of progressed, it gives you more and more information, and then towards the end, you finally realize they're a cult, but they're a cult that is trying to I guess
Are they
take
trying to take the bodies of black people?
yeah, like the brains and bodies, so like the athletic characteristics of black people, they're trying to like put inside people who may be aging or elderly, or in one guy's case, he can't see well, so he wants the main character's eyes.
Sort of like
Uh,
hypnosis
That's
has a lot
weird.
to do with this movie, right?
right.
Yeah.
I remember watching some clips of it, and one scene in the end when they're in the kitchen, and the part with the spoon, and
What?
That's
I was
crazy.
just I almost hurled. I was like, oh no, oh no 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 no. It wasn't even
Yeah, it's
that
pretty
like
wicked.
it wasn't
Yeah.
even like that graphic, but it was just like seeing it, and
Mhm.
I was like, I can't look
His
at
other
this
movie's pretty
for
good
too
too.
long.
Us is pretty good as well.
Oh, yeah.
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 They're all amazing movies. Us is
Goodness.
probably one of my favorites.
Mhm.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say though, the part that was the creepiest to me was when, so, he's trying to leave the house, and the dad's getting all weird and like getting all philosophical on him, and then the brothers, he's just a weirdo the whole way through the movie. Um, but like
Flat
he's
out
trying,
weirdo.
right? He's
True.
trying to get out the door, and Rose is just standing there, and she's like, "I don't know where the keys are," and he's like, "Give me the keys now!" And I'm like, "Okay, she clearly is messing with you." And then she's like, "Oh, I can't give you them." And so after that, they knock him out, and he
Snaps
wakes up.
fingers.
He wakes up tied to a leather chair, and then this TV just starts playing, and it's like one of these creepy 19, I don't know, 50s like brainwashing videos. I don't know. And this guy's explaining the whole process, and just the background music and like the sound of it, just I'm like, oh, it's so weird.
He's
You
like
know?
explaining it like so nonchalantly too, right?
Right, right.
He's doing it like almost like a professor in in a class.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but for sure that is a very strange movie. Definitely recommend it, to anybody who hasn't seen it. But hey, Matthew, what's your opinion on this?
Well, I think Us is a really good movie, but I think for non-horror movies that scared us, I think the real thing that scared me, I'm talking about me as a kid again, because what can I say? When you're young, things scare you more than they should.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure.
Uh, and one of the things that scared me a lot as a kid was this show that, for some reason, it would only show up at like 3 a.m. It was on Nickelodeon, which means that was probably during their adult lineup, and and I just didn't know. And it's a show called Mr. Meaty.
Oh no.
And I barely even remember the premise. All I know is it used a lot of puppets, which at the time, if a puppet is not an animal, it's terrifying. And so these guys, they were men. They were like people puppets, which is already scary enough.
Ew. Like
Yeah.
Jeepers Creepers kind of type vibe.
I don't know
Kind
if that
of.
is. All I know is
Hey.
they're scary.
They were like you could tell that they were puppets, but like they looked like they were made out of skin.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And everyone was voice acted by the same two guys, or maybe even just one
Mhm.
guy.
Yeah, and it
What?
just freaked me out. It relied a lot on like gross out humor from what I remembered,
Yeah.
Mhm.
which at the time I didn't like gross out humor. Also, I would watch this at like 3 a.m. When you're watching things with gross out humor and it's also weird and it's the point is at 3 a.m. it feels like a fever dream. Like
Nothing good happens at 3 a.m.
The Halloween
like,
episode
let's
was
just say
especially
that.
pretty bad. When
I've
all the
never-
meat came to life.
Oh no.
yeah, I've never taken drugs,
Oh,
but
no,
I'm
that's
pretty
painful.
sure that it's fair that I know the experience just from watching that.
Watching Mr. Meaty.
Yeah, that kind of show really rattled my. Sorry, Carl.
I'm not. It rattled his bones.
Hey, dude, he's really. Oh my god.
Wait,
What's that, Carl? Hey, I'm talking here.
Oh,
What's
sorry,
that,
man.
Carl?
Movies that scared us with a sound alone? Really?
You've been really demanding of us lately, always asking us questions like this. It's pretty weird, man, not gonna lie.
Don't talk to Carl that way. He's trying his best, okay? Now answer the nice skeletons questions like a good little boy.
Okay. Well, I guess a movie that scared me with the sound alone. Now, somebody brought this up a little bit earlier, The Dark Knight. When I first saw that, I was so excited to see it, man. But the sound is really what was the scary part of it. Christopher Nolan is a master at basically using strings from a violin or a cello and just slightly bending them out of tune. And that bend out of tune, it's under the mix, and there's like the bass and everything. It really makes the scene more suspenseful than it actually is. Like if you were to take the music out, like it would still be suspenseful, but you wouldn't get that same feeling. So all the scenes where like the Joker's getting up close and personal with people, they have that music and they know exactly what they're doing, and the notes will either drop down when something happens or they'll bend up, and the way it was strategically placed. Now as a kid I obviously didn't understand the music theory behind it,
Intricacies behind it.
right, but I knew how it made me feel. And then I noticed how Christopher Nolan did that in his other movies as well. He did it in the next Batman movie with Bane, and even in what was that one? It was the one about the magicians he did.
Prestige.
The Prestige. You can see that kind of stuff is going on a little bit in there too. So yeah, anything that I can't really do the sound. You'd have to look it up on your own. But it's the sound of strings, and they're moving like really fast, but they're kind of going out of tune. That really adds like a tension that the viewer almost subconsciously. It almost like makes the viewer subconsciously anxious while the film is going on.
Is it bad?
So-
I know exactly what sound you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know it? Yeah.
And it doesn't even give you like room to think. It's just
Right.
like look at this, absorb it, but don't think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just don't think about it.
Especially like in the scenes when that like I think it was the one when he's talking to Dent in the hospital, and you hear that, but then it slows down, and then like you hear like the Joker's theme playing in the background. It's very subtle, but you can definitely hear it while he's convincing Dent to be Mr. Meaty, Mr. Bad Guy, and it's just oh.
Mr. Red Guy.
Yeah, his face kind of grosses out my sister. Like as soon as it gets burned, she's like, "Oh, that's really gross." And I'm like, "Don't be mean. There's some real
Yeah,
can't help it."
don't judge the man. That's not his fault.
You know what happened to the first guy who saw his face and got freaked out by it? He's sleeping with the fishes now.
Oh my gosh.
What about you, Garrett?
So for me, I think the perfect example, at least for me, of a movie that is able to scare somebody with just the sound alone and maybe a little bit of visuals was The Thing from 1982. That movie is like one of my favorite movies of all time, and it does have a musical score, but they know exactly when to use it. There's moments in the movie where there's just almost no sound at all. You'll probably just hear the crunching of snow, or sometimes just the breathing of the characters or the wind going by as something's happening on screen. And not even just mentioning the amazing practical effects that have been done in this movie, not even mentioning those. The sound in this movie is able to make you feel what the character is feeling just by not playing anything at that moment. It's not just about, whenever it comes to audio design, it's not just about having music or having sound in the background or having a sound effect. It's about knowing when to use those sounds and how to use them.
True.
And I think that The Thing does it perfectly. For example, the scene whenever they discover that first discover that there's something going on, when the guy bursts the door and runs out into the snow by himself and kneels down, and everybody starts circling him. He looks up at all of them with like lifeless eyes, and he just slowly opens his mouth as this horrible roar happens, as he slowly shows that his fingers have been extended an extra like foot and a half. And they just start burning him, and you can hear the screaming of this creature until it just burns away. And that's whenever it sinks in for the viewer, like what exactly is going on. And like later in the film, whenever they're all by themselves, like pretty much whenever they realize they need to stay away from one another, or at least whenever they do, whenever they are away from one another, it's a feeling of like isolation. They realize like they're alone in this Antarctic tundra. They're not able to go anywhere. All they can do is either fight back against this thing or die. There's no in between, and it's slowly closing in on them without making a single sound.
Holy crap.
You'd make great
Any one of you-
campfire horror stories.
Yeah.
Anyone,
Yeah.
it could be any one of them, but they don't
It
know
could
that.
even be one of us.
And lastly, the last thing I want to say before I pass it on to somebody else is the photography in this movie is also amazing. You know, the lead cameraman, or I'm sorry, the lead I forgot the name of the role that somebody, cinematographer. He had a little hint for you to see who's a thing and who's not. Which I think, like, before they actually like show off that they're one of them, and I think that's absolutely beautiful
Really?
whenever it comes to film creation.
Yeah.
I will say it. Spoilers, real quickly. There's the light glint in their eyes. If somebody has a light glint, at least in that moment, they're not one of the things. But if like you're looking at somebody's face on the camera and there's not like a glint of light in their eye, they're one of them.
Oh wow.
I guess you could
Which
say
is very subtle and very good.
I guess you could say that the monster is Among Us. What about you, Andrea?
Yeah.
I definitely will have to consider watching the movie. Garrett sounds very interesting. For me, a movie that I would say scared me just alone with the sound. Would probably say. Well, I have two. I have Midsommar, which is like one of my favorite movies ever,
Oh,
and then Midsommar, and then Sinister. I don't know. Sinister just has some serious, scary, like deepening sound effects. The first Sinister, that is, that just make you jump and really just make you like kind of not sick to your stomach, but you're just like super nervous. I really also think that horror movies that sometimes or mostly have like no sound, just like the complete like stillness and quietness, and just that kind of energy really just makes the movie like 10 times more intense and scarier. Um, but like there's this one part in the film where he's like he has a kid and he has a family, and he wakes up like every night at the same night, like at a devilish hour, and like he just hears this like film rolling because he's an investigator, and I believe he's investigating like a killer who would like make videos and of them like slashing the family or just like completely like killing them in the most brutal way. But just that sound of the film rolling like every night in the middle of the night, waking him up, that really, you just knew that nothing good was about to happen. Um, so that for sure. And then there's one part where he's out in the hallway and he wakes up from that film noise, and he sees this like random box in the middle of the hallway, and it's like dead silent, like completely silent. You maybe hear like some like little like screeches here and there, but it's other than that it's like completely silent. And he just like is staring, like him and the box just basically have like a stare down for like a good minute of the movie, and then all of a sudden the box just like completely opens, and
It's a
kind of
pipe
like his exercise like kind of child just is crawling out of there, or it's what he's seeing because he's like starting to like see delusions and stuff because he's just going crazy. But instantly just like high screeches, and it makes you jump out of your chair for sure. Kind of piercing, honestly, but that's one of the main reasons why that movie I would say is definitely scary with the sound alone, just because the intensified screeches and just sound being everywhere and
You
then just
try to like
complete
wait for that
stillness.
kind of like moment, and you're still
Yeah,
never
right.
prepared for it, even when you think you are.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Who doesn't love suspense? Like, I'm a sucker for it. So, but yeah. What about you, Connor?
Um, the film that really got me was I don't even know why I went to see this in theaters, but I heard it was good. It was Arrival, the one with the
Oh,
Mm.
that's a good one.
that
That's
that
real good.
scene.
It's a really beautiful movie, I
It
thought,
is
honestly.
very beautiful. I really did like the role. Uh, like Amy Adams' character was just really great,
Yeah.
but then that
Yeah,
whole
she
like a
is.
double story that they were telling with like those flashbacks was
Mhm.
really interesting. And the scene when they're being like when they're going into the freaking ships, like that was already pretty suspenseful. But like when like the ship's gravity gets them and they're standing there, and then it goes silent, and then you hear this giant, deep, like the guttural blaring of like horns, and
Yeah.
it just like whoa, this is not good. um like, and it did that multiple times throughout the film, but every single time it was still just as jarring as the first.
Kind of just
I was just
go ahead.
backing out of my seat, like this is not what I signed up for. I wanted a nice movie about Amy Adams. What were you gonna say? The
Nice.
aliens specifically, when you find out like when you find out what they are, like it's a lot less intimidating later, but like you don't even know, like there's two of them and you don't even know what they are,
you
and you barely
you
see
don't
what they
even
look
really know what
like.
they look
Yeah,
like.
so
Yeah.
especially with like the weird stuff that they were shooting out onto the window. So
Like an arm or something like that,
like
like an alien octopus or something.
I guess that's what the framing was for as well, because it was very narrow. Uh, uh, like that's how the cinematography was. So it's like they're in
Yeah.
this boxed in space, and it's a long hallway. It's like they're not getting out of there. So whatever is behind that wall is if it's having a bad day, it's just gonna come and eat them out of here.
Go full psycho.
What about you, Matthew?
So when I think about horror movies that scare us with sound alone, I think of a movie that not so much scares you with its sound, but scares you with its lack of sound. I'm talking about A Quiet Place,
Oh man.
directed by
Wow.
John Krasinski.
Very good.
That would
Yeah.
honestly be like
Very
a very good example, yet not because it's like so quiet. So that's a good one.
Yeah. I saw that movie in theaters, and it was very effective to just keep things silent. The main things that you hear throughout the entire movie are footsteps and just small things like that. And each time just those tiny sounds are used, it sort of feel tense. There's this tensity throughout the film, just because no one talks, and if they do, it's in hushed whispers and soft tones, and
Until you see the
then
creatures.
until you see the creatures, in which case it gets very loud. And when the rest of the movie is so silent, that even just being a little loud can be deafening, and that is done really effectively in that film, on such a great scale, I think.
It's
And
demonstrated very
Sure.
early on, like very like
with the toy rocket.
with not just the toy rocket. Well, yes, that one for quietish sounds, but then there's the scene with that old guy, and it's
Yeah, I
just
was
like
actually about to talk
yeah,
about that. Yeah, where that is definitely a great moment where it goes from very soft in the beginning of the scene to very loud, and and the horror comes from the creation of loud sounds.
One of my favorite scenes from that movie was definitely the one with the waterfall.
Yeah.
I love
It's
that
a
one.
good scene. Wait a minute, Carl.
Didn't. Oh, sorry.
Hey, Carl was saying something, all right. Wait a minute, Carl. You haven't answered any of these questions. What's your first horror movie? What's that? You have a doctor's appointment? Well, it's nice to know you care about your personal health.
Matthew. Carl's dead.